He was in his room 1 second. The next, he wasn't. No warning, no transition. Just the sudden, suffocating realization that the walls around him had vanished and been replaced by something else. Something wrong. This is what happened to a man who thought hell was a metaphor. A concept. A theological abstraction debated in seminaries and dismissed at dinner parties. He learned otherwise. And what he experienced in that place, in those hours that felt like years, changed him in ways that can't be undone. This isn't allegory. This is his account. The first thing that hit him was the absence. No light. Not darkness the way you experience it in your bedroom at night, where your eyes adjust and shapes emerge. This was darkness as a presence, as a substance, as if the air itself had been replaced with something that devoured photons. He couldn't see his hand when he held it inches from his face, couldn't see anything, but he could feel. The ground beneath him was wrong, not quite solid. It gave slightly under his weight, like standing on a surface that was deciding whether to support him or let him fall through. The texture was rough, abrasive, as if the stone itself had teeth. Every step scraped. Every movement reminded him that even the ground here was hostile. The temperature made no sense. Cold and hot existed simultaneously. His skin burned while his bones froze. Sweat poured down his face, but he shivered uncontrollably. Physics didn't apply here. Comfort wasn't an option. Then came the smell. Sulfur, yes. That cliché turned out to be true, but underneath it was something worse. Decay. Not the sharp rot of something recently dead, but the ancient, sweet putrescence of things that had been decomposing for eons. It clung to the back of his throat, made him gag, made him wish he could stop breathing, except he couldn't. He tried to orient himself, turned in a circle, searching for any reference point, any landmark. Nothing. The darkness was complete, absolute. He might as well have been blind. That's when he heard them, voices, distant at first, murmuring, overlapping, hundreds of them, thousands. A chorus of sound that came from everywhere and nowhere. He couldn't make out words, but he understood the tone. Anguish, despair, the sound of people who had given up hope so long ago they'd forgotten what the word meant. He opened his mouth to call out, to ask where he was, to demand an explanation. No sound came. His vocal cords moved, his lungs pushed air. But the darkness swallowed it. Silence pressed against him like a physical weight. He was mute here, voiceless, unable even to hear his own screams. Panic set in then. The kind that makes your heart feel like it's trying to escape your chest. He ran, stumbled forward through the dark, arms outstretched, hoping to find a wall, a door, anything. His feet caught on unseen obstacles. He fell hard, scraping his palms on that tooth-like ground. Got up, ran again. The voices grew louder. Now he could make out individual words. Fragments, regrets spoken aloud by people he couldn't see. I should have. Why didn't I? If only I had. Each voice carried its own story, its own crushing weight of missed opportunities and wrong choices. The man wanted to cover his ears, but it wouldn't have mattered. The voices weren't entering through his ears. They were somehow inside his head, part of the atmosphere, inescapable. He kept moving. How long, he couldn't say. Time functioned differently here. Seconds stretched into hours, or maybe hours compressed into seconds. He had no way to measure, no way to know if he'd been walking for minutes or months. That's when he saw the first light. Not a torch, not a flame, a glow, distant, flickering. The color was wrong. Not yellow or orange, but a sickly red that made him think of infected wounds. Still, it was something, a direction, a goal. He moved toward it. The light didn't get closer. No matter how long he walked, it remained at the same impossible distance. always visible, never reachable. A false hope, a cruel trick. Other lights appeared, scattered across the darkness like dying stars, each one the same distance away, each one unreachable. He understood then. This was part of the design. The torment wasn't just the darkness. It was the lights that showed him there could be illumination while keeping it forever out of reach. Something brushed past him. He spun around, saw nothing, but he'd felt it. A presence, close enough to touch. The air moved. A shape passed through his field of vision, darker than the surrounding darkness. Gone before he could focus. Then another, and another. Figures moving through the void. Shadowy forms that might have been human once, but weren't anymore. They paid him no attention. They had their own torments, their own endless wandering. He was just another lost soul in an ocean of them. One walked directly through the space where he stood, passed through him like he was vapor. The sensation made him want to vomit. A coldness that went deeper than skin, deeper than bone. It touched something essential, something at the core of what made him him, and left it feeling contaminated. He fell to his knees. The ground scraped his skin through his clothes. Or were there clothes anymore? He couldn't tell. Everything felt exposed, raw, vulnerable. That's when the memories started, not random recollections, specific ones, curated. Every moment of his life where he'd chosen wrong, every time he'd hurt someone, every lie, every betrayal, every moment of selfishness or cruelty or indifference. They played in his mind with perfect clarity. He couldn't look away, couldn't fast forward, couldn't deny them. Worse, he felt them from the other side, experienced the pain he'd caused as if it were happening to him. The friend he'd betrayed felt his own betrayal. The person he'd dismissed felt his own dismissal. Every wound he'd inflicted came back as his own wound. This was the real torture. Not fire, not physical pain. This, the complete unavoidable confrontation with every failure, every sin, every moment where he'd chosen himself over truth, over love, over what was right, and there was no escape from it. No rationalization that held up. No excuse that sounded convincing. Just the raw, undeniable reality of who he'd been and what he'd done. The ground beneath him felt like it was dissolving. Or maybe he was the one dissolving. Boundaries between self and environment blurred until he couldn't tell where his body ended and the darkness began. Time lost all structure. He might have been kneeling for seconds, might have been centuries. The memories kept coming, relentless as waves, each one stripping away another layer of the lies he'd told himself about who he was. Then something changed. A sound cut through the silence, not like the whispers. This was different, clearer. It came from above, though there was no above here. Direction meant nothing in this place. He looked up, saw nothing at first. Then a crack appeared in the darkness. Thin as a razor's edge, light leaked through. Real light, not the sickly red glow of the false stars scattered across the void. This was pure, white, almost painful to look at. The crack widened, slowly, agonizingly slowly. And through it, he heard voices, singing. The sound was so foreign to this place that it took him a moment to recognize it as music. Harmonies layered over each other, building into something that felt like it had weight and substance. The shadows around him recoiled, drew back from the expanding light like living things afraid of being burned. Their retreat revealed others, hundreds of them, thousands. Souls kneeling in the darkness just like him, all of them looking up at the crack, all of them seeing the same impossible thing. Hope. That's when he understood. This wasn't his prison. This was his choice made manifest. Every decision he'd made that led him away from that light had built this place brick by brick. The darkness wasn't imposed from outside. It grew from within. From every moment he'd chosen self over truth, comfort over conviction, easy lies over hard honesty. The crack continued to widen, became a fissure, then a chasm. The light poured through like water breaking through a dam, and with it came a presence. Not one of the wandering shadows, something else entirely. A figure descended through the opening, radiant, terrible, beautiful in a way that made him want to hide and draw closer at the same time. The figure landed in the darkness without disturbing it, stood in the middle of the void as if the ground beneath was solid marble instead of shifting shadow. He recognized the face, had seen it in paintings, sculptures, stained glass windows, but those images had been lies. Comfortable domestications of something far more intense than human art could capture. The figure walked among the kneeling souls, stopped before some, past others. No pattern he could detect, no logic he could understand. Each time the figure stopped, something happened. The soul would stand. The darkness clinging to them would fall away like old skin, and they would rise, float upward through the crack toward the source of the light. He watched this happen again and again, waited for the figure to reach him, prayed it would, prayed it wouldn't. Both at once. The figure stopped 3 souls away from him, then 2, then 1, then directly in front of him. The eyes that looked down at him held something he hadn't expected. Not anger, not judgment. Something worse and better simultaneously. Grief. The figure reached down, extended a hand. The same hand that had been nailed to wood. The scars were still visible. He could see through them to the light beyond. He wanted to take that hand. Wanted it more than anything he'd ever wanted. But something held him back. A weight he couldn't name. A chain he couldn't see. The figure spoke. One word. His name. Not the name his parents had given him. The name he'd always been meant to have. The name written somewhere before time began. Hearing it was like being known completely, seen completely, loved completely, despite being seen. And that's what broke him. Not the darkness. Not the memories. Not the torment. The love. The relentless, unreasonable, undeserved love that reached into this place and offered rescue to someone who'd spent a lifetime running from it. He reached for the hand. His fingers passed through it. Not solid. The figure was there, but not there. Present, but not present. He tried again. Same result. The hand remained extended. The invitation remained open. But something prevented connection. Then he understood. The barrier wasn't external. The figure wasn't rejecting him. He was rejecting himself. Every lie he'd believed about his own worthlessness. Every moment he'd chosen shame over grace. Every time he'd insisted he was beyond saving. Those were the chains. Those were the walls. The figure waited. Patient. Endless. As if time meant nothing. As if he had forever to decide. But he could feel the light beginning to fade. The crack beginning to close. Not because of any imposed deadline. Because that's what cracks in darkness do. They close, unless something holds them open. He thought about his life, the real one, not the edited version he'd told himself. Every moment of genuine connection he'd dismissed as weakness. Every act of kindness he'd mocked as naivety. Every truth he'd rejected because it demanded too much. What if he'd been wrong? What if the darkness he'd chosen wasn't freedom but slavery? What if the light he'd run from wasn't oppression but liberation? The figure's hand remained extended. The scars in it caught the light, held it, reflected it. Those scars told a story. Someone had paid a price. Someone had entered this darkness before. Not as a tourist, as a prisoner. Had descended all the way down. Had taken on every sin. every failure, every moment of human darkness, had carried it to the deepest point, and then had risen, breaking the power of this place, not by avoiding it, but by passing through it. That's what the scars meant. This wasn't rescue from a distance. This was rescue from the inside. Someone who knew exactly what this felt like, who'd experienced the full weight of separation, who'd walked this same void, who'd faced this same darkness, and who'd emerged holding the key to unlock it. He reached again. This time not with his hand, with something deeper, a choice that went beyond physical gesture, a surrender that meant letting go of every defense, every excuse, every carefully constructed story about why he deserved to be here. His fingers touched the scarred palm, solid, real, warm. The contact sent light racing through him, not burning, purifying. Every dark memory met by something brighter, every failure acknowledged and then covered, every wound cleansed. The figure pulled him upward. The darkness fell away, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he rose. He woke gasping in his room. Same walls, same ceiling, same ordinary space he'd left from. But nothing was the same. His hands shook as he held them up to the morning light streaming through his window. Real light. Clean light. The kind that doesn't make promises it can't keep. He couldn't explain what happened, couldn't prove it to anyone else. Vision? Hallucination? Something beyond either category? The labels didn't matter. What mattered was the weight that had lifted. The chains he hadn't known he was carrying until they fell away. He'd seen where the path he was on led, seen it with a clarity that bypassed argument and went straight to bone-deep knowing. And he'd been given a choice. Not once, not at some future judgment. Now, in the middle of the darkness, while there was still time to turn around. Some people need gentle whispers to change direction. Others need earthquakes. He'd gotten the earthquake, and he was grateful for it, because now he knew. Hell isn't waiting somewhere in the future for people who fail a theological quiz. It's being built right now, one choice at a time, one rejected truth at a time, one moment of choosing self over love at a time. The architecture of darkness doesn't require dramatic evil, just consistent small refusals of light. But he also knew something else. The light doesn't give up, doesn't stop reaching, doesn't withdraw the offer just because it's been refused 1,000 times before. The hand stays extended. The scars still catch the light. The invitation remains open until the very last moment. He'd been given a glimpse of what he was building, and a chance to build something different instead. Not through perfection, not by erasing the past, but by accepting rescue, by taking the hand that reached into darkness, by letting love do what he couldn't do for himself. The man who came back from that place wasn't the same man who left. Couldn't be. You don't see what he saw and return unchanged. The darkness had shown him who he was. The light had shown him who he could become. And now, every morning when light streams through his window, he remembers. Remembers the choice, remembers the hand, remembers that the distance between heaven and hell isn't measured in miles, but in decisions. Small ones, daily ones. The kind that seem insignificant until you see where they lead. He chose differently now. Not perfectly, not without failure, but with the knowledge of what's at stake, with the memory of darkness that could have been permanent, with gratitude for the hand that reached in when he finally stopped refusing it. That's the story. Make of it what you will.